Hello and welcome back to this coding challenge. In this case, you had to write a Python program that prints the character at a specific index of a string. So in this case, we have the string assigned to the variable s and the index assigned to the variable I. In this example, we want to access the character at index 0 of the string, and that would be the letter H. If we make a small diagram right here with the letters H, E, L, L, O, and below we write the indices, we can see that at index 0 we have the character H. So that should be our output for this particular example. After we have these two variables, we have to start writing the actual code that will decide what will be our output. First of all, we need to check if the string is empty. Because if we have an empty string, then there is actually no point in trying to print a character. There are no characters in the string. So how can we do that? Our first option is to use the length function. This function can be used to get the length of the string and compare that value to 0. If the length is equal to 0, then we have an empty string. There are no characters in the string. If this condition is true, then we have to print empty string, if that is the case. But if that is not the case, and right here we have a condition that is false, then we have to go to the elif clause. In this clause, we are checking if the index that we assign to the variable I is less than the length of the string. Why? Because we cannot use an index that is out of range. We cannot go beyond the range of valid indices. For example, right here, the valid indices would go from 0 to 4. If we use, for example, 7 as the index, that would not exist and we would have an error in our code. The program would crash and you would see an error message. But that is not what we want. We want to prevent this and check if the number is valid. Why are we using this particular condition? Well, let's see. The length of the string, in this case, is equal to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? And the value of I is equal to 0. But what is the greatest value that I can take? The greatest value that I can take is equal to 4 in this example. That is the last index in the string. So the index is only valid if I is less than the length of the string. Why strictly less than? Well, because we are starting to count from 0. So the last index will be the length of the string minus 1. This condition will be true if the index is valid. So we can print the actual character at the index I that we specified right here. And we will see the correct output. But if that is not the case, and the value of I is greater than or equal to the length of the string, then we go to the else clause, because the value of I is not valid. And then we print I is out of range. For example, if the value of I is equal to 5, then we are out of the valid range of indices. The last valid index was 4. Now the value of I is equal to the length of the string, 5. And that is not valid, so we go to the else clause and we print that I is out of range. If I was, for example, 15, then that would also be an invalid value because it is greater than the length of the string. We are trying to access a character that doesn't actually exist in the string. Awesome! So now you know the basic logic of this solution. Let's save the file and run our code. Right here we see the value H printed as the output, which is exactly what we needed. We have the string hello and we want to access the character at index 0, which is the character H. Now let's say that we want to access the character at index 1, which would be this character right here, the letter E. And we see E as the output right here. So this part of the conditional is working correctly. Now let's see what happens if this condition is true, if the string is empty. If we have an empty string, then we see exactly that, empty string as the output, because that is how we wrote our conditional right here. If the length of the string is equal to 0 because we have an empty string, then we print this message. And finally, let's see what happens if we have an index that is out of range. For example, let's write the string hello and the index 15. We run the code and we see I out of range because the string doesn't reach index 15. It doesn't have that many characters. So we go to the else clause and we print this message. Great, now you know how our first option works. But right now I have a second option for you that is very similar with just one small improvement or modification. Let's comment this out first so we can run our code and go to our second option. Let's uncomment this and let's start diving into the second option. We still have our two variables s and I, and right here we have a conditional, the same conditional that we had before. But now notice this. Instead of using the length function that we had previously we used something like this for the condition. If the length of s is equal to 0, and now we are using this, only two words, not, the operator not, and the name of the variable. And why are we doing this? Well, because in Python we have something called truthy and falsy values. If a string is not empty, and you use it like this in a conditional, that string will be true. It will evaluate to true. And we are checking if the string is empty. That is what we are doing with this condition right here. This condition will be true if the string is empty. If the string is empty, this will be false, like this. The string will be empty, this part will be false, this will convert the value to true, and this entire expression will be true. So, if the string is empty, this will be true, and we will print empty string. This is recommended in Python using these values as truthy and falsy values. If we want to do something when the string is empty, we just add a not before the name of the variable that contains the string. Okay? Awesome, now you know how to work with truthy and falsy values. Let's save the file and run our code. We see empty string as the output. Exactly what we expected because the string right now is empty. Now, if we write a string right here, we will see the value h, the character h, because we are finding the character at index 0. And that is exactly what we needed. Awesome! This principle of truthy and falsy values applies to lists, tuples, dictionaries, and other sequences as well. If they are empty, they will be false, and if they are not empty, they will be true. Just like with numbers, 0 is the only number that evaluates to false, and any other number evaluates to true. Great! When you're ready, let's start working on the next coding challenge.